Hello, hello, and welcome to hour 9 of the PeopleSoft Innovation Summit. This is meeting modern data privacy requirements in PeopleSoft, and we will be led by Jim Marion, our good friend Jim. My name is Scott Lavery. I am the head of marketing here at Appsian, and I would like to thank everyone for participating in today and yesterday for the PeopleSoft Innovation Summit. Just a few quick housekeeping notes. Everyone is on mute, and the session is being recorded and will be posted to the registration landing page likely next week for free on-demand viewing. The session today will be 45 minutes, so there will be limited time for Q&A. You can get your questions answered, though, in a couple of different ways. One would be reaching out to Jim or Greg, aka Appsian, directly. Or you can go ahead and push your question in the question section of the control panel. That will be captured, and then we can just reach out to you at a later date. So with that, I will go ahead and turn things over to Jim to begin today's presentation. Jim?
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. So first, want to introduce those who are going to be presenting today. So I am a People Tools trainer, so I offer a variety of People Tools training, mostly focusing on People Tools, but then again, we do have some functional, for example, AWE and Query, etc. And I'm joined today by Greg Wendt, who's the Executive Director of Security at Appsian. Now today, as you know, because you saw on the title slide there, we're going to be talking about modern data privacy requirements in PeopleSoft. Now, I had to think about that title and, linguistically and think about that and say, okay, modern data privacy requirements. Okay, now ask yourself, is data privacy a modern requirement? No, no. Privacy goes all the way back, doesn't it? We've always wanted privacy. In some ways, we've had it. What is new, though? What is modern about data privacy and requirements? Oh, legislative, isn't it? It's now we're actually required, and I guess that's the term required. I mean, I personally think of, hey, I want data privacy, so to me it's required, but legislatively it hasn't been required until recently, and that's what makes it modern. So the question is, what is PeopleSoft offering? What in the applications helps us with data privacy? So I want to take a minute here. Let's whiteboard what's available. And it starts with, well, let's say we have the application here. So I'll just go ahead and draw a nice little box here for our application. And then we have around that, we have a firewall, don't we? So that's one way we protect the privacy of the data within our system. We lock it up. So we might call this, well, here, let's draw a nice little padlock here. So one way is the fence, the firewall around the system, authentication. So getting connected in and logging into the system. But we also have, if you think of it, not now that you're in the system, the various components. So one way we protect the privacy of our systems is just through access control. So let's go ahead and put that up here, access control. Okay, so that's one way we protect our systems. That's always been there, hasn't it? Getting authentication to the system, and then once you get into the system, what can you access? And while PeopleSoft provides out of the box, they provide one option, that is the username and password. If you look in PeopleBooks, it'll actually tell you, yeah, even though that's an option, it's probably not what you should be using. Instead, you should be using something more robust, some sort of an enterprise security solution on top of PeopleSoft, with username and password being the access of last resort.
Hey, Jim,
okay, so
real quick.
Go ahead.
Your doodles are not showing on the screen. So I thought I'd jump in and interject real quick.
My screen is not changing. Thanks for that. Well, it was really cool what I had up on the screen anyway. Hold on. I'm really sorry. That looks better. I
Yeah,
like it. There's my doodle. Thanks for
yes.
that, Greg. That's why you're here. Well, for more than that, but thank you. And of course, with access control, oh, here, let's do this too. Just in case there are any of those in the audience that are hearing impaired, let's go ahead and turn on captioning as well. Thanks for catching that. Okay, so let's see. Let's say that we have somebody who attempts to access, but they can't get through the firewall. They don't have access control. Of course, they get bounced, right? So that's what we want to see. Okay, great. So that's access control, but something else that's been in PeopleSoft for a long time for data privacy is access to the data itself. So we call that row level security. So, you know, if we were to draw a table here with its rows, and I may get access to some rows, but not all the rows. So here, let's draw little red lines here on the rows that I'm not allowed to access. Those exist in the table, but they're not available when I log in and select data. So we call that row level security. That's not new to PeopleSoft, is it? That's something that's been there for a while. Actually, we expect it. What is new, and this is something that we've all wanted for a long time. I can't tell you how many times users have come to me and said, hey, we've got this page or we've got this component, and I understand you can show and hide on a page level basis using permissionless, but on this page, there's a specific field I want to hide. Oh, that's data privacy, isn't it? What's a great example of that? Let's take job data. Job data is an HR component that has everything related to an employee's role, job within the organization, their relationship to us within the organization. That's what's cool about it. It has everything, but that's also what's bad about it, is because everybody wants a little bit of job data, but only a couple of people need everything that's in job data. So how do you protect job data and different pieces of job data? What about personal information? If you go to the personal data, modify a person, you have national identifier there. Well, how many people actually need access to national identifier? Not very many, right? So that would be our field level access. And here, let's talk about how we implement field level access now. So field level access is available to us today, depending on tools release and image release. So what we're going to talk about now is what's new in PeopleSoft. So field level access. So let's start with what's available in 855. 855 would have been our first release for event mapping. And so we can use event mapping to show and hide fields on a page, can't we? So let's see, let's put event mapping. That's one option. And that would have been as of PT 8.55. Okay, what image release? Actually, good news is it doesn't matter. Okay, and now that gives us the ability to show and hide fields. What about data masking? Can you mask? Actually, we can with event mapping as of PT 8.57 using field, a new method, .set display mask. And we'll just put its parameters in there. We'll just write it like this. And put it right there, draw a nice little bullet. Okay, so that's what we have available to us as developers. Interesting though, I mean, this is actually the first thing I reach for whenever I'm thinking of how can I transform an Oracle delivered application. I mean, for example, if we were to take the national identifier and mask it or even remove it, you know, if we were to do that prior to 8.5, that would have been a modification or customization, actually a very common modification or customization. How can we do that as a configuration? Well, with 8.5, we have event mapping. 8.57, we have event mapping and set display mask. So 8.55 gives us the option to remove it based on, you know, is user enroll, then record.field.visible equals false. Well, with 8.57, we can say if user enroll or if not user enroll, then set display mask. So we still keep it there, but we're masking, and we can decide, hey, mask all but the last two, mask all but the last four, mask everything. It's up to us. And event mapping is the first thing I reach for, but really, and as much as I like to write code, we should probably be reaching for some sort of a metadata-driven solution, don't you think? So with that, with 8.55, we have the potential for page and field configurator. And we have that, let's see, let's go with 8.55 for that. Or not. Actually, 855 gives us the potential for page and field configurator, but 855 does not give us page and field configurator. Well, why not? Because page and field configurator is not part of People Tools. What? Page and field configurator is part of enterprise components, which means it's controlled by the applications team. So you can think of it this way. It's tools built on tools, or even better, it's tools built by apps and adopted by all other applications. For example, the product managers behind page and field configurator, they come from the financials team. They're not People Tools developers. They're financials applications developers who've recognized a need for us to be able to configure, to show and hide fields, or even better, mask fields, as we're going to see today. And they said, hey, I think all other applications want that too. Cool. Well, is it part of People Tools? No. So it's image related. So in order to have page and field configurator, number one, we need to be on People Tools 855 or later. Number two, we need to adopt an image, whether it's HR Financials or Campus Solutions, that supports page and field configurator. Oh, and it's not just a matter of adopting. It's choosing to selectively adopt because, you know, through lifecycle management, well, if you do a get current, hey, that means take everything, but we don't have to do a get current, do we? So I could actually be at image 35 for one module, but still not have page and field configurator because I haven't selectively adopted page and field configurator. Anyway, 855 gave us the option for page and field configurator along with image and image. But what about data masking? Well, data masking in page and field configurator was not available in 855. It wasn't available until after, 857. Oh, fascinating. Why is that? Why did they wait until 857 to give us data masking in page and field configurator? Let's see, let's go with, I'll just abbreviate PAFC, page and field configurator. Data masking 8.57. The answer is because page and field configurator is really configurable event mapping. Okay, think of it this way. You and I, we want to manipulate an Oracle delivered transaction. We want to hide fields, we want to mask fields, we want to change labels, change default values. Those are probably the most common customizations that you and I would make. Now, we could make those at the page level, but those would be, of course, customizations. An easier way to do it is perhaps using Page Activate or some other People Code event to manipulate those properties at runtime. Now, the cool thing about those as a customization is it's really easy to just take that fragment of code and append it at the end, or even better, some sort of a shared definition such as a library or an application class that you can insert right as the very last line. So it makes for a really easy retrofit. So event mapping allows us to skip the retrofit and say, hey, let's just inject that code at runtime, really at runtime. Page and field configurator says, oh, wait, so let's see, that's the most common customizations. How about we give people a point and click interface with metadata? So people often ask, is page and field configurator, does it write event mapping people code? Does it write people code? No, it doesn't. Instead, the page and field configurator team created a set of algorithms, and page and field configurator allows us to configure the inputs to those algorithms. So they have algorithms that say hide fields. Okay, what fields? Oh, point and click. Let's select all the fields we want to hide. Set display mask. Okay, what fields? Okay, point and click, select the fields. What kind of mask do you want? Oh, interesting. That's a great question. But hey, wait, do you just get data masking with 857? No, why? Because it's part of page and field configurator. Enhancements to page and field configurator do not come with tools. They're an apps feature. So, and image, let's do that, and image. Okay, cool. I'm just looking over here at the screen. I can see you guys can still see what I see. Perfect, that's good. Let's see some of this stuff in action now. What would this look like? So let's see, let's do an event mapping first. Let's take a scenario. Let's log in as a user. So I'm going to log in here as Vicky, and as Vicky, I'm going to go ahead and look at my direct deposit information. And I can see my routing number here. Now, routing number, bank code, it's probably not that secure. In fact, they secure the account number and the routing number here. I struggle with that one a little bit. Anyone ever written a check before? You know what's at the bottom there? Do you absolutely 100% trust everyone you've given a check to? Yeah, I think what makes this information so challenging today is not the fact that the routing and account number is there. It's the way electronic banking works and doesn't authenticate. Anyway, that's another story. That's another story. Let's stick to the purpose here. Let's say that you want to mask the routing number. So, okay, how would you do that? Well, using event mapping, and I've written some event mapping people code here. Here, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's pretend you're on 855. You don't have masking available. Let's just say, you know what? We've decided routing number is sensitive information. We need to take it away so it's not visible unless somebody actually needs to get to that data. Okay, great. How are we going to take it away? So in 855, we'll just write a little fragment of people code here that says record.field.visible equals false. Where would you do that? Well, let's see, this is at level 1, so I need to iterate over all those rows. So for each row, I need to say visible equals false, visible equals false, visible equals false. Actually, there's another trick. If you can get a pointer to the table, you can say column visible equals false. So you can hide the whole column at once. But let's see, we can hook into row init here using event mapping. So let's do that. Let's hook into row init. I've already written the code for us. It's just a code fragment. What is it? Record.field.visible equals false, wrapped in an application class because this is code that needs to be invoked dynamically, and application classes allow us to invoke code dynamically. I don't need the whole code here. I just need my code fragment. What is it? What's the delta? What's the very little piece that I want to accomplish? Hide that field. And now let's log in as an admin and configure that. So let's see, off to People Tools, Portal, Related Content Service, Manage Related Content Service. I'm going to go right into event mapping. I did in advance because I know we only have about 45 minutes here and lots to cover. In advance, I pre-configured direct deposit. With mapping, I just turned it off. So I'm going to enable that right now. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Okay, awesome. It's hidden. I don't know that that's a good thing. Routing number's gone. Wait, how are, you know, there's questions. Routing number should probably still be visible. So fortunately with 857, we have the option, let's go back to our people code, of rather than hiding, we can use set display mask. So let me go ahead and reload now. And we can see the routing number masked using the character I chose to mask it as. You want to use question marks, use question marks. You want to use X's, use X's. Asterisks. If you want to use some sort of a Unicode character that you know is going to create an amazing shape on the page for the hidden character, awesome, do it. Just make sure it's safe for HTML, because remember, that's what it's rendering is HTML here at the end of the day. Okay, great. So we can see we can do it with event mapping, but you know what I said? We probably should avoid code as much as possible and go with some sort of a metadata alternative. I mean, personally, I'll tell you, I love code. I like to write code, I can read code, and the code that I write, I think is easier to read than some other configurations, but you can't report off of code. It's a lot harder to merge code. So we probably should be going in. There's a lot more opportunities with metadata. We know that. That's why we chose PeopleSoft, because it's a metadata-driven application. So instead, what if, here, let's take another scenario. Let's go to personal details. And in additional information here, I see national identifier. That could be a problem, can't it? So we probably want to mask the national identifier. So let's find this component here, the component name. You know, actually, Control J, right? That's how I should get the component name. Oh, do you have Control J on in your production systems? I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. This gives away way too much information for bad actors. So my recommendation, our recommendation is keep it turned off in production systems. But then again, how do you find out what the component is? You know, we don't have time for that to get into it here. Sometimes it's in the URL. Don't trust it though, because if it's in an app collection or anywhere else, it's not going to be there. But anyway, we need to know the name of the component, and Control J sure would be nice, wouldn't it? There are other options. Let's see, let's go into the configuration now. Let's go to Page and Field Configurator. Page and Field Configurator is Enterprise Components. It's delivered with apps, not with tools. So we'll find it here in Enterprise Components. I'll scroll down to Page and Field Configuration. Page and Field Configurator. Let's find the component. Chances are the first time you're actually going to go into add a new row and then insert the name of the component, select the market, etc. I can see here, here, let's do return to search. You can see I specifically have the masking configuration. Masking configuration was something that was added to page and field configurator after 857. Remember, images after 857, so it'd be images that were released after 857. That's when we get the masking option. Standard was the only option before, so we actually didn't even have this list here. Today we have masking as an option. So I'm going to select my field. What field do I want to mask? And let's see, it is the national identifier, isn't it? What's the label over here? Social security number. Let's find it. Social, oh, it's not there. How can it not be there? What I'm walking you through here is the challenges that we have when trying to use page and field configurator. And especially if you turn page and field configurator loose for your functional experts. They're gonna have to work through this. So the question is, actually, social security number isn't here, is it? Why isn't it here? Well, it's actually here, but it's under a different label. Oh, so how do you get from this to this? Well, the safest way is App Designer. Open the page in App Designer, find out what the record field is behind this, and then find that record field here. That's why they give us the listing of the record name and field name. Alternatively, we can shortcut that sometimes by inspecting the HTML and finding derived HR NID special char. Derived HR NID special char. Awesome. Okay, there it is. So let's select it and then say OK. And then let's configure the masking for this. Oh, look at that. It already has a predefined mask profile. That's convenient. Has a mask character of X. And interesting. I wonder how it's actually masking. Let's find out. Oh, it's not happy with me. What did I do wrong? Well, let's do this. Let's select a partial field mask instead. Let's choose what we want. Says it's saved. What's the worst that could happen? Let's go ahead and map it to the target. I'm going to apply to all. And let's see it over here. Let's see if it really masked. Awesome. Okay, last four visible. Why? Because I chose a profile that said partial, leave the last four visible. These profiles here, kind of interesting. You notice there's a handful of profiles available to us. There's a national ID mask, which basically says, hey, apply the same mask everywhere to everywhere we see a national identifier. That's actually pretty cool. I like that idea. If we look at, let's see, let's go to in the navigator. You'll notice that they have the defined masks and defined profile groups. So defined mask profiles, if I look at national identifier, you'll see all the details around the national identifier. It says masking type setup table. What does that even mean? Great question. Basically what it means is, hey, for these fields, I'm not going to tell you what it looks like. I'm not going to configure it here. Rather, instead, we go into this table and you can see here the format masks for the different national identifiers, because it needs to be based off of, okay, we have a national identifier in the US that looks like this, but a national identifier in Canada might look different, or national identifier in UK might look different as well. So we can't just say, hey, let's just find the national identifier generically, or let's define it generically, but rather instead, we have to define it by control fields, and that's what you see here, control fields, country and national ID type, country, national ID type. Okay, well, that's awesome. So we know we can configure it using event mapping or page and field configurator. The cool thing about page and field configurator is anyone else should be able to come in here and pick up from your configurations, not having to understand your code, and even functional business analysts. This was designed for functional business analysts. But now we have to ask the question, should we be building this ourselves? Or is there an application delivered solution? Great question. Let's take a look here. So logged in as a super user here. Okay, awesome. In Enterprise Components, if we scroll near the bottom here, we find the data privacy framework. And in the data privacy framework, we find maintain categories, maintain data privacy settings, etc. So basically, this is a registry of all of the fields that represent some sort of personally identifiable information, something that we should be securing. So the registry is here. Okay, that's great. That's part of Enterprise Components. Now, what about the app specifically? Oh, actually, you know what? While I'm here, I should point out that the apps teams have pre-populated. Now, of course, that differs per apps team. Campus Solutions, HR, and Financials each have their own data, and each of them would be responsible for populating this registry with their data. And we can see here, this is clearly HR data, pre-populated. You and I can add additional rows here if we either decide that Oracle delivered fields are sensitive, or if we have our own custom fields that we want to make sure we're protecting as well. I do want to caution you though, because you'll notice that I have the opportunity to change this Oracle delivered metadata. Now, okay, some of you are developers and you know that PeopleSoft is a metadata driven application. What is Application Designer? It's a metadata manipulation tool, isn't it? What do you use App Designer to do? Customize. Customize what? Metadata. You know what this is? It's metadata. Basically, what I'm saying there is anytime you change Oracle delivered metadata, yeah, think of it as a customization, because there's the potential for Oracle to overwrite with their changes to their own metadata. This is theirs. They delivered it. They own it. If you and I change those configurations, yeah, we have to manage those going forward. There's nothing here that says, hey, override this data. No, it flat changes it at the database level. Just a word of caution. If you add your own rows, of course, Oracle doesn't know about those rows. It'd be great, like creating definitions in App Designer. What does that do? It inserts rows of metadata. Oracle doesn't know about the rows you insert. They know the rows they insert, and they own those rows. And anytime we change those rows, it doesn't matter where you're doing it. If you're changing Oracle delivered rows of data, yeah, that would probably be a customization to Oracle delivered data. Okay, let's see. Let's go one more place. What about at the apps level? Have the apps teams delivered? Now that's not going to be in enterprise components. That's going to be under setup HCM. If I go to install and then installation table, we see HCM options and you look, oh, look at that, enable masking. So at the applications level, the apps development teams have gone through and updated their code to take advantage of masking. The question is, where does that masking come from? Where does the security come from for masking that data? It's actually under setup HCM security and then data masking. And then we can specify authorized roles for different field groups. So for example, national ID. Who's authorized to see national ID? Now I want to show you, because as I was looking at this is a PUM image here. And PUM images do have a lot of demo data, but you will notice for each of these different pieces of information, nobody's authorized out of the box. And of course, in your own instance where you're uptaking, incorporating Oracle's code, you may not be including some of their configuration. So these come in. So if you turn on data masking, you might find it's masked for everybody, like national identifier masked for everybody. Let's take a look at an example. I am still logged in as a super user, happen to be logged in as an HR administrator here. And let's visit a page. Let's see, let's go to Workforce Admin, Personal Information, Modify a Person, and let's look for KU0059. That happens to be Vicky, the other user that I logged in as. And if I scroll down here, you'll notice national identifier. It's not masked, is it? But notice birth year is. Oh, wow. So if we look back here at authorized roles, we see date of birth. I don't have anyone specified. What does that mean? I turned on masking at the installation options level. Everything is now masked. But if we looked at the national identifier, I said HR administrators are allowed to see the full national identifier. So national identifier is not masked. But if I log in as a different user who is not an HR administrator and go to the same place, Workforce Admin, Personal Information, Modify Person, and look for KU0059, I see it is masked. Okay, now let's talk about one more piece here, because I think we can throw another wrinkle in this. What if we want to mask not just based on role membership, but also row level security? Like for example, here I can see Vicky's Inn's national identifier or Vicky's Inn's birth date. Birth year is masked. What if I'm allowed to see personal information for different people, but it has to be masked for some people and not masked for others based on my role membership and row level security? Could you do that with these configurations as they are? Not that I can think of, not as the Oracle delivered HCM. Could you use page and field configurator to do that? Absolutely, absolutely. Using user lists and row level security, or the different levels within the page and field configurator, absolutely, or through event mapping, absolutely. Okay, one last thing I need to show you, and then I want to turn it over to Greg, where he can talk about how does Appsian improve upon this story? What do they have to add to the data privacy that's coming out of the box with PeopleSoft applications? Let's talk about query here for a minute. So in a new window, actually here, while we're here, let's go to Enterprise Components. I just want to show you where it's at, where you configure it. So let's see, Enterprise Components, and then down to Data Privacy, Query Masking, Authorized Roles. Well, first off, is it on? And then, who's allowed to see what? This is a little bit interesting. See, we have in Enterprise Components, the Data Privacy Framework, we have that whole personally identifiable information registry. Okay, now who's allowed to see what within query? That's a great question. You can see I have several configurations here for HR administrator. Now C. Jackson created a query for me earlier. And so if I go to reporting tools, query manager, and look for IS, data masking, let's run this. And looks like just about everything's masked out of the box, isn't it? Sorry, C. Jackson, can't really see anything. That's actually one of the things I want to point out. When you turn on data masking, just recognize basically everything's masked. And then it's on you to start unmasking. And that's actually good, right? Let's secure it all first, and then you can start unlocking doors as you see appropriate. But hey, lock all the doors. That way we don't miss any. Then we can start unlocking some. As user PS, since I am an HR administrator, I see some data, but not all of it. So reporting tools, query manager. Open the same query. And basically what you're going to see is the the birth date. Birth date is unmasked, whereas birth date is masked. Now the other things are still masked because I didn't unmask them. So how deep does that run? I want to show you. So here's that exact same query run as user C. Jackson against the query access services. And what I want you to see here, this is data is all coming back masked. Anyway, I want to take a moment now, pass it off to Greg so that he can share with us how the Appsian products further enhance data privacy.
Perfect, thanks, Jim. So what I will do is quickly grab the screen here real fast. All right, so what I wanted to start with, let me share my camera. It won't be as cool as Jim's because I don't have this fancy backboard and all these other type of things. So let me turn it on real quick because Jim's got the cool setup from home. So let's talk real quickly about what Jim was talking about. So when we think about data masking as a whole and protecting that data, the main difference of what we do here at Appsian is we're going to take all of that information and then we're going to add additional context to that. So many of our customers come to us. When you look at what we do with our application security platform is we're going to take things that are outside of PeopleSoft, for example, context, how your users are accessing the system. It could be they're accessing from home. It could be the fact that they're on the VPN, wireless, wired, time of day, the type of data that they're looking at, what type of device they're looking at. You know, are they on a mobile phone versus a non-mobile phone? You know, do you trust that? How do you want to control the data in that situation? So that's where we're going to extend that to allow you as an organization to have additional controls on top of that. So let's quickly jump over and demo here real fast. So I'm going to jump into a PeopleSoft system, sign in as a higher privileged user, and we'll just talk real briefly about a couple of different things. I'm going to go over to the employee self-service and something that we do that's a little bit different. So I'm going to drill into the personal details here quickly. And what we'll see from a personal details perspective is when we get to that additional information page is the user's data is going to be masked out as well. This was all done through ours. This is not the page field configurator, but we have a couple of different ways that you can actually do a field mask. So we've got the static masks that you might see in that scenario. We can do it by roles, by where people are coming from, you know, maybe even header values coming in from the network, for example. And then we've also got this one that's kind of a hyperlink. That's what we're going to call our click to view. I'm going to jump into that a little bit more details. So you can see that you can build the same type of masks in very quickly. Going back to the self-service, one of the things that I wanted to cover off on was a huge difference. What you'll see here is going into the direct deposit page, for example. Looking at the self-service, we do have access to the account number, but you have to be able to access that after passing a multi-factor authentication. So this is a point in time stepped up authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and do a push notification here real quick. And you're going to see, since I've got my video up, I can approve that on my phone here real quick. And once I do, it's going to drop me back into the page and they're going to be able to change that information. One of the advantages is that stepped up authentication for them to access and be able to change that information. That's one of the real fundamental differences. If it weren't for that, they would just be able to come in, look at the account number, go in and say, yes, I want to edit it, clear it out. And, you know, if a hacker's got a hold of those credentials, they're just going to change and update that information. And that goes back to Jim's conversation about, you know, electronic banking and how it works, because there's no validation. And that is a totally different conversation altogether. So I'm just going to cancel out of that. So bringing in those additional context, injecting in that multi-factor challenge using, you know, a plethora of different MFAs for that stepped up authentication without having to customize your system is a really big way that we extend that a little bit further. A couple of other things that we do is I'm going to drill into the workforce administration, modify a person. I'm going to open up just a record here real quick. And what you'll see is I don't have the delivered data masking turned on, but what I do is I have this click to view. This is one that we have developed specifically. So based upon, you know, this user has the primary permission list to be able to update. So they've got the row level security to be able to change any of the fields on this page. So what we're going to do is step in on top of that and mask that data. If that user is required to maybe validate, somebody's on the phone, they want to see that information, they can simply just click that data. What it's going to do is it's going to expose that data. If they attempt to refresh, go to another person, the data is going to be masked. The important part there, though, is we specifically now track that somebody accessed that piece of information. So for certain privacy laws, GDPR, CCPA, you know, the new one coming online in Canada, you know, even Japan implemented a very a very close mimic of what GDPR is over there. You need to be able to track and understand what type of data has been accessed and who's viewed it, when they viewed it, has it been exposed? For example, it could be a high privileged user was doing this, it could have been a hacker at that particular point. So, you know, being able to have that knowledge of the in-depth tracking of that. So if I flip over to analytics real quickly, one of the things that I'll look at here is within the last 15 minutes, I can easily see that my user ID, I was signed in as PS1 to that system, has accessed a specific employee ID, KU001. We know that they accessed sensitive information on that record because, you know, that's how the system is built. It's got those auditing controls built into it as well. So it closes that loop to where you have a full circle monitoring of it. You can also see that we can set up alerts so that the user can be notified specifically maybe when access has occurred. So it can go directly to auditors, GRC, risk personnel, any of those types of situation as well. So that closes the loop to make it a little bit faster for that understanding of somebody accessing that sensitive information. If you quickly expand that to look over a period of time, you can definitely see and trend how many users are accessing this sensitive information, who's looking at it. If you need to do incident response tracking of your functional users, all of those types of things, we're taking it to those next couple of layers beyond, you know, just protecting it inside of the system. One of the other things that we'll see frequently is masking a data, and I'm going to back up just a little bit to job data. So I'm going to open up that same person's record within job data, and I'm going to look at the compensation. So when we're talking about compensation data, this is something that's obviously sensitive to some organizations where others it's not. If you're, let's say a state organization, this is all might be publicly listed on a website that, everybody has access to anyway. But if you're a private organization or a company, you might want to protect this information, and that's where we can not only mask out the information that's on that page, but we can also track the viewing of this information as well, which is a common request that we're going to get, to be able to understand and embed in the accessing of certain information, who's accessed. So once again, I actually set up a notification based upon somebody accessing that page. Even though there was data masked on there, we're still going to be able to track and understand that somebody did attempt to look at that. What you'll realize is, data masking is something that you have to think about across your organization, across all of your implementations. This is a dev test stage QA, all of your test environments. Every environment needs to have this, because Jim could probably go into a little bit more detail, but if you think about the typical implementation with all of the different upgrades, the PUMs, you've got multiple copies of these databases. I've talked to organizations that literally are in the 20s to 30s to 40s of numbers of databases inside of HCM, which is significant, especially if they all contain private, production level data. You have to treat them all very sensitively and make sure all of those are protected. So those are just a couple of the key points that I wanted to call out that we definitely do and extend over what PeopleSoft delivers. And with that, I know we've got a couple of minutes left in the session, so I'll toss it back to Jim, and then we can open up for Q&A as well.
Hey, thanks, Craig. So I do see a couple of questions, and I went ahead and wrote in the answers. If you have other questions, please queue those up as well. So the first question I saw in the chat is, can we do data masking without doing page and field configurator, something like enabling data masking on the page field or record field properties? Well, I'll tell you, masking is not a record field property, but the answer is still yes. You can do data masking without page and field configurator. One solution is clearly what Greg just showed, using the Appsian security platform. Also, we can do it just plain old with people code. So that's just record.field.setDisplayMask using event mapping. Another question I see in chat there, and if you have others, please feel free to add them into the chat. Are we able to hide or show buttons using the page and field configurator? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, page and field configurator. Actually, I answered it in chat and in the Q&A, and I see I answered it wrong. I read the question wrong. Are you able to hide and show buttons using the page and field configurator? Okay, the way the page and field configurator works is off of records and fields. So it doesn't matter. Is it a button? Is it a checkbox? It doesn't matter. Is it a record and is it a field? It really looks at the component buffer. So if we were to look at the component buffer structure from App Designer and ask that question, what does it look like at the buffer level? The buffer doesn't care how it's represented. Is it a button? Is it a checkbox? Is it a data entry field? So the answer is yes, you can use page and field configurator to hide and show buttons through record.field.visible equals false. But that's basically what page and field configurator does. You can also use it to hide group boxes. So for example, Greg and I both showed direct deposit. At the bottom of direct deposit, you'll find the pay statement print options. Can you hide that entire pay statement print option section using page and field configurator? Yes, as long as number one, that group box is attached to record and field, because that's all page and field configurator cares about. And number two, does the group box have hide content when child items are checked? And the answer to both of those is usually yes with Oracle delivered pages, which is great. I'll tell you, not usually yes when I'm developing something, because I don't think to look at those because it's not necessary. Oh, I see a couple questions in there for you as well, Greg. I'll read those off to you. Does Appsian plan to do anything with masking data in the database?
That's a good question. We've had a couple of different customers ask about that. It's something that there's a lot of, Oracle's got really good products for it. SQL Server has different products for it. So it's something that, there's the vendors do a decent job of that. So it's a space that we haven't really gotten into at this particular point in time. I mean, I would say if they're a customer, let's open up and have a very, the detailed conversation on it and see where it can go. But right now it's waters that we haven't really waded into because of the vendors do a very good, they offer things there.
Okay, great. Well, with that, we're at time. So I'm going to pass it back to Scott for closing. And those of you, Scott, it's yours.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you. Yeah, Jim's pulling double duty, so he needs to go grab a bottle of water, take a bathroom break, because he's going to be back here in 15 minutes. But thanks, Jim. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate everything you guys did. Obviously, thank you all for attending the session. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we will have future PeopleSoft Innovation Summits. They are currently being planned as we speak. Everybody will be getting a survey on Friday. If you could please fill that out and let us know your feedback, what you'd like to see, those type of things, greatly appreciated as we plan our content. Anybody on this presentation who's interested in PeopleSoft security, we'd obviously love to chat with you more about it. If you're going to be attending Interact next week through HIUG, if you're going to be attending Reconnect the week after through Quest, Appsian will be at both of those conferences. We'll be presenting at both of those conferences. We'll have a virtual booth at both of those conferences. We'd love to chat with you. Please stop by. Last but not least, we'd like to encourage you all to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. That's Appsian, of course. And then you can also find us at www.appsian.com. So we are about to hit hour 10. And we will be finishing things up with harmonizing your PeopleSoft user experience across Fluid, Classic Plus, and Classic Pages. This is a highly, highly, highly popular session. Jim will be back to do it. So make sure, if you have not registered for it, you can go back to the registration page, the original landing page where you registered for everything. You can register for that session, and you can join the 500-600 or so other people that have signed up for that. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you guys in about 13 or so minutes. So until then, stick around and we'll be back soon. Bye-bye.